Right, so here we are. This is the little jewellery box we're going to be making today. Right away I'm just going to apologise for the shadows. I haven't got my lighting quite right yet, but it's a work in progress. So here we are, just a simple little box, and we're going to do a little bit of metalwork and make this pretty little nautilus shell. I'm going to put that one to one side, and this is the size little piece of, we're just going to work with aluminium today. Just take a brayer. That just flattens out the metal a little bit before we start working on it. Okay, put that on here, and what we do is we just tape it onto our design. And there we are. So I've stuck it underneath here with some tape. Now in the kits, these designs come on a piece of paper, so all I've done is just transferred it onto tracing paper. So next thing we're going to do is we've got this tool here, which has got a nice sharp point on, and this is what we're going to do our tracing with. Okay, so it's a very simple matter at the moment of just tracing around our lines. The more careful you are now, the better your end result's going to be. If you don't have any of these embossing tools, you can just use a ballpoint pen. And if you don't have any rolls of metal, which obviously nobody really has at home, just sitting around waiting, you can use an old takeaway aluminium tin or or you could just use like a Coke tin or something, but you've got to be very careful. They do have very sharp edges. So what I would suggest you is just put a little bit of masking tape around the edge, just so you don't cut yourself. Okay. So this just takes a moment. If I'm doing a big design, what I'd do after a few moments is I would just turn it over just to make sure that my pressure is hard enough. Okay. And if you've never done this before, it's a good idea just to practice on a little piece of scrap metal first. That way you get to see how hard you're pressing. It's harder pressure than if you're just writing, but it's not so hard you're going to rip the paper. And you can also feel from the top. You can actually feel if there's any where you've done your embossing. Okay, so in this one we're just going to be doing on aluminium, but the same techniques are going to apply to whether you're working with pewter, brass, copper or aluminium. I always say to my students, start off with aluminium. It's not quite so painful when you make a mistake. It's not quite so expensive. Right, so there we are. We should have that all done now. You can see. So carefully take the tape off. If you're new to metal embossing as well, it's not a bad idea just to take a permanent marker or a little bit of tape and just put an F on the front and a B on the back, just so you know which side you're working on. Okay, so we're going to work on the hard surface. I should have mentioned that earlier. We will start off on the hard surface. Let's have a look, see, get in a bit closer there. You can see all the dents nicely. There we go. So that's embossed well. The next thing I'll do is take some lubricant. You can use baby oil, you can use olive oil, you could use what do they call it, petroleum jelly. I'm not trying to name drop any particular products here, but we will know what we're talking about. Right, so there we are. That's now greased up on both sides, and the reason we do that is because at this stage we are using a metal tool onto metal, and it just helps it glide across the surface. Later stage I'll show you Teflon tools which don't need lubrication, but for the time being we're just going to work with these tools. So on the front of your board, hard side, on the front of your metal. When we work on the back of our metal, we generally work on the back of our board. On the back of the board is a soft foam. Okay, if you haven't got soft foam, you can use layers of paper, you could use chamois leather, you could use layers of felt, but we always just start with a thin layer and then we push it out further and further. But for this one, we're not going to be pushing out too far. Something to remember is that when you push it out a long way, and when I say push out, I mean you've stretched the metal so it gives you a raised effect. If it's pushed out quite a long way, you will need to fill it from behind, which will be with either a beeswax or I just use a normal crack filler as well if it's a shallow design like this. So what I'll do here now, we want to start defining. So I will take the second size, so not the skinny end, we don't want to make any big marks here, and just these are the lines I want to make stand out, so that would, when you turn it over, you can see, let's just show you there, let's bring it up a little bit, you can see these lines I've done here are just standing up a little bit more. We will be using the paper stump in a while as well, just to raise it a little bit more. So let's just bring that around there. Let's see, if you slip a little bit like I just did, don't worry too much. Don't rush this. It becomes a very relaxing and very absorbing craft. And you can add the metal to all sorts of things. So today we're adding it to a little wooden box, but you could add it to a metal box, you could add it to glass, MDF, any hard surface basically, as long as it's a flat surface. I mean, it could be a round bottle, but when I say a flat surface, I mean a nice smooth surface. Okay, because the metal is so thin, it needs to be supported. Here a little bit. Let's just move the metal around as well to be comfortable. It's easier if you are bringing your tool towards you. There we go. She says, there we go. And we're going to just bring it around a bit more. We'll just push that out. Right. Let's turn that over now and have a look. So you'll see it's already started to raise a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to now turn the board over. So I'm going to work on the front of my metal and on the front of my board. Just use your finger just to gently flatten your metal. Because the idea is always to keep your background as flat as possible, because that's the bit that's going to be sticking onto your box. Alright, so that's fine. I'm going to come in with a paper stump, which is this one here. Just going to flatten around the edge of the design. And you'll soon start to see how quickly it actually raises. Okay, I'm just going to pop in there. Alright. Now I'm going to start defining this one, so I'm going to start just on the outside here, see, with my second size tool, and this is called defining or redefining, depends how many times you're doing it. Okay. And now the reason that we want to have nice strong deep lines is so that when we patina it, the patina will sit in those lines and give you that aged look. So in this case today we're going to be using paint because we're using aluminium, but if I'm doing pewter then I would be using an acid patina. So I'm going to go over the original lines now. And this is just making everything stand out, so I'm not going to press too hard here, just enough. There we go. remember that I have lubricated this so it makes the tool just slide, whoopsie, just slide over here. I'll show you how to fix that problem in a moment. So there it's starting to pop up and it's nice and defined. So where I just made a mistake now, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go onto the back of my board again. So I'm on the back of my board, as you can see, and I'm on the back of my metal. And I'm going to take my paper stump. I'm just going to come in here and we use it, it's almost like a rubber or an eraser. We're going to push those little veins out, or whatever you call bits of a shell, I can't remember. There we go. And we're coming in a bit tight there, so we'll just push out with our finger. Let's have a look. So here we go. You see it's starting to raise nicely. So it's got very beautiful detail in there. So I'm going to come back onto the front of my board and back onto the front of my metal. And again, I'm going to come in with a paper stump. Just make it nice and flat around the edge of the design. And then I will come in with my ball tool again, my embossing tool, and just go right around the edge again. Here we go. Just a quick little bit of neatening up. I always think that it looks nicer as well if you do a little border. It just seems to sort of contain the whole design. So I'm going to just draw a little line down here. Now in later tutorials I'll be showing you, bigger projects, but this is just to give you a little taster. You can see how quick and easy it is to do something very effective. It makes a beautiful little gift. Okay. And then I would also I just think it's a little bit plain. So you can take your sharp end here and you could just do, just flatten again. You could do dots or little squiggles. You can find a textured surface to give the background here a little bit of texture. But texturing the background also hides any scratches. Now, aluminium's okay, it doesn't tend to scratch as easily, but you'll find if you're working with pewter that it's very, very soft and it will scratch quite easily. So I think what we just do here, we just do some little dots. Doesn't matter what size you use, we'll just pretend these are little sand grains. Don't forget to sign your work as well. It's your piece of artwork. I'm going to do that in a moment in one of the corners. Then whoever you give your gifts to, they will know. Oh, my hand's right in front of everything, sorry. Okay, I'll put my little signature here. And just finish off some little dots. Alright, so there we go. Let's just make that flat again. I'll come in with a paper stump. Just not too hard or else you're going to get rid of all your little lines and dots. Just enough to make it flat. Okay, now because you have used oil, we need to get rid of that. So we can just use some meths. If you don't have meths, some talcum powder, hang on, I can see a few gaps there. You could use talcum powder, anything that you think, anything like flour will basically just work as a degreaser. I use meths on a piece of this batting. Now the batting is, I think you also call it wadding. It's the stuff you use for putting inside quilts, for padding a jacket or something. Okay, so we're going to pop that over there. Now this isn't raised very much. I'm not going to worry about filling this one today. I'm just going to dry it off with a bit of kitchen paper. Don't worry about the fact your board's going to get a bit messy. That's fine. Okay, so now that's all ready for patinaing. So the next step is I will just put it onto a bit of kitchen roll because I want to totally destroy this board. Put it on a bit of kitchen paper. And the next thing you do is take a little blob of black paint and a brush. Oops. And a brush, and we just cover the whole thing in black paint, which is a bit daunting. I know the first time I did that, I didn't know what was going to happen next, but you will see. So we just pop that on there, leave it for a few seconds. Take some kitchen roll, and then we just wipe it off. Just wipe it off in one direction. And if it's not dark enough, then you can just put paint on again and then just wipe it off the other direction. And there you go. Let's take it off there for a moment, shall we? And there you go. Now, in order to stick this onto a box, all you need to do is take a little bit of double-sided tape, cut it to size, and then you pop it on top of the box. And once it's on top of the box, we'll come back to this in a moment. Just wanted to show you this bit. On top of the box, just take your paper stump and just make sure your edges are done neatly. Right, so once you've got this other piece here that we've just been working on, just let it dry a little bit more, and then you take a bit more kitchen roll and you can just buff it up. So if you don't think it's dark enough, you just put more paint on and you start, and then just rub it off from the other direction. So let's have a close up in here. There you go, and that will be your